Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen demands a new debit card, gets what she deserves. I work at Woodforest National Bank. This story happened about a month ago. One of our usual entitled Karen customers comes into the bank demanding that we print her a new debit card because she lost her old one. We issue debit cards same day so long as they pay a debit card fee, $10 for a reprint and $15 for a new card, waived for certain accounts. A reprint was a simple task, so I print her card and send her on her way. She then walks back into the bank because the last two numbers were slightly rubbed off. This is due to how the machine prints the cards, and it's pretty common. Karen: I want you to print this card again. Me: is it not working? Karen: look at the last two numbers. Other banks don't give me cards with rubbed off numbers. Me: I'm sorry, ma'am, but sometimes that happens with the machine. It rubs off part of the numbers when activating the chip. I don't care. It looks terrible. Do it again. Me: ma'am, I don't think this is a good idea. We really don't have control over the machine. She starts raising her voice. I don't care what you have to do. Just print my card again so it looks nice. She takes a pair of scissors and cuts the card up into tiny pieces right in front of me. Print the card now, or do I have to close my account and contact the market manager? The market manager isn't someone you would know unless you've had a conversation with him before. It's obvious she's trying to name drop him to get me to shut up and comply. Cue malicious compliance. I turn over to my manager and he gives me a nod. I then put on a devious smile and say, absolutely, ma'am, but to ensure this won't happen again, we will need to change the numbers, so I'm going to need you to sign some things. See? Was that so hard? We then spend the next 10 minutes printing out new cards until we get one that doesn't have the numbers slightly rubbed off. Each time the card isn't to her liking, she cuts it up and says do it again. I just smile and say, sorry about that, let's try again. Each time, until about 8 cards later, she finally gets a card number that isn't rubbed off. Finally, this card looks good. Thanks. She just leaves with a smug grin, thinking that she won, and leaving us with her massive pile of cut-up debit cards. What we forgot to remind her is that having a completely new card generated outside of fraud or expiration costs $15 to be deducted from your account. This is made clear at account opening, and since she signed off on having all these new cards printed, there was nothing she could say about it. Normally, I try and help people avoid bank fees, but in this case, forget this, Karen. A couple of days later, she comes storming into the bank looking upset. What did you do to my account? Me: I'm sorry, ma'am. What seems to be the problem? There's a bunch of debit card fees on my account. What did you do? Me: oh, every time you had me print a new debit card for you the other day, a $15 fee was charged to your account. The first one, where you had me reprint the card number, was only $10. You need to reverse these fees right now before I call the market manager and get you fired. At this point, my manager steps in. Manager: hello, ma'am. What's the issue? Your employee tricked me into paying over $100 worth of fees because he kept messing up my debit card. Manager: ma'am, could you please not yell? Also, I was there. You demanded we print you a new debit card because you didn't like the numbers being rubbed off. We have your signature on these forms stating that you wanted these cards to be printed. I will not be reversing these fees for you. Karen: then I want you to close my account. Manager: okay, but first, you need to pay off your negative account balance as well as your line of credit. Just give me the market manager's number. This is insane. Me: sorry, ma'am, but we aren't at liberty to just give you his number like that. Here's the number to customer service if you'd like it. This is true, as he's instructed us to not give his number out to customers who ask for it. The only people who need his number already have it. She takes the number and screams, I'll have all of your jobs for this, kicks over the chair and storms out. We get a call from customer care later about the incident, where we explain everything and scan over all of the signed debit card applications. Also, she had us print 8 brand new cards and the 1 reprint. That cost her about $130 in fees because she demanded a new debit card. The best part is, my manager likely would have just waived the original $10 fee had she just been nice and asked. Am I the jerk for kicking my maid of honor out of my wedding with 5 days' notice? I'm 23, female. I'm getting married in a couple of days. Most of this happened in the last 2 weeks. My maid of honor, who's 26, Mara, was in charge of planning my bachelorette party. which I wanted to be a surprise. We live in a city, but none of us live downtown, so I was hoping for a hotel room downtown and having a fun night out with friends, maybe a brunch. Most of the bridal party lives locally, but 2 girls flew in for it. When Mara picked me up 2 weeks ago on Friday, I was excited to see where we were going and what we were doing. We ended up going to Mara's 1-bedroom townhome and spent the whole weekend there. There are 8 of us, so it was cramped and we kept running into issues with only 1 bathroom. On Friday night, we had games and ordered pizza. Saturday, we had a mimosa bar, went shopping, ordered food, and watched a movie before parting ways on Sunday. It wasn't the bachelorette party of my dreams or a particularly fun weekend, but it was okay and I appreciated it. Last weekend, my fiance, who's 32, James, had just returned from a work trip. I hadn't caught him up to speed on the party because there wasn't much to report. But when he returned, we were chatting and I told him about the party. He looked confused, but said nothing else that evening. The next day, I got a message from Mara asking to meet up to talk about something. Mara revealed that James had given her a significant amount of money over a year ago with the intention that it was used to be paid for the bachelorette party. It would have been enough to pay for the entire bridal party to do a week-long vacation out of town, including airfare, hotel, food, drinks, and fun. I wasn't expecting this type of an event. A weekend downtown would have been wonderful, and even though the party at her home wasn't what I had hoped for, I was fine with it because I got to be with all of my friends. She, instead, used that money to pay off her credit card debt and hoped that no one would notice. I told her I needed some time to process this and I went home. After talking with James about it, I decided that the best action would be to remove her from the wedding. I came to this decision because I don't feel I can trust her and I don't want her to be standing next to me at my wedding. I slept on it overnight and sent her a text saying this on Monday. Since then, I've been getting texts from her mom and boyfriend telling me how awful I am for doing this since I didn't need a big party and Mara was able to financially benefit. My mom is also against removing her from the wedding as she's like a sister to our family and it would be tragic for me to get married without Mara there. The rest of the bridal party is split, with half saying I shouldn't have kicked her out and the other half agreeing with me. Mara has been crying because she already has her dress. James and I paid for all of the dresses, and she can't wear it anywhere else. At this point, I want the wedding to be over so I can be on my honeymoon and not having to deal with these people. So, was my action too extreme? Am I the jerk? Do these people not realize that she stole your fiance's money? OP. People realize it, but the prevailing sentiment is, in the case of my bridal party, they don't particularly care, and her mom feels it's okay because it got her out of debt. My mom is just disregarding the entire situation because she cares about Mara. She obviously knew it was wrong because she told you out of guilt. OP. She didn't tell me out of guilt. After he found out what my bachelorette party was, my fiance told her either she needed to sit down and tell me or he would. Depending on the amount, you could totally press charges. OP. Neither me nor James are interested in dragging this out in court or pressing charges. He wouldn't have given her more money for a bachelorette than he could afford, and this situation is not worth the amount of emotional turmoil that would put everyone involved. We've gotten enough backlash for removing her from the wedding. And the bombshell, the amount stolen, $25,000. Are you guys insanely rich? How do you brush off $25,000? OP. My fiance makes significantly more money than me and my friends, as well as our families do. Did you tell the others how much she stole? Because that could have helped them too. OP. I haven't disclosed the amount to anyone yet. I'm probably going to send a text out tonight with that information and stating that anyone who feels she was justified is free to not attend on Saturday. Why in the world did your fiance give her that money a year ago? OP. I think he gave it to her under the assumption that a week-long party would take a while to plan, and that way she could start booking things that may have limited space, as well as dispersing money to coordinate flights. She's a person who's been in my life since I was 18 and typically comes over to our house at least once a week. My fiance considered her a close and trusted friend as well. It's technically my fiance's money, even if it was for what was supposed to be a gift for me. He's leaving it up to me if I want to press charges and has let me know that he'll support whatever route I want to go. I'm still kind of in shock and obviously upset, so pressing charges or taking her to civil court is the last thing on my mind. He does have text messages confirming that she received it and what it was for, and she has sent me things confirming that she used it to pay off debt, and her mom and boyfriend have as well. Maybe I'll change my mind later on, but right now I just want to get married and get away from the drama. Update. To answer the most pressing question, I removed her from the wedding, and I disinvited those who continued to support her after I shared the amount that she stole. My husband and I had a lovely wedding and honeymoon, and when we got back, we got in contact with his lawyer to begin compiling information and preparing to file a civil suit. This is still in the early stages, but as so many did point out, we do have a responsibility to ensure she faces some kind of consequences to prevent this from happening to someone else. While we won't be pressing criminal charges, we'll cooperate with law enforcement should the DA wish to bring charges after information is brought forth in our civil suit. I honestly don't believe my ex-friend has the money to repay us, but we will be donating anything we receive from the trial. $25,000 for a bachelorette weekend? Time to log off of Reddit before I stare at my bank account and wonder what it's like not to sneeze at $25,000. Thinking about it, it's so out of touch of the groom to think it'll be problem-free to hand a normal person or a broke person $25,000 for the party as though it's petty cash. For most, that's a life-changing sum, and being told to spend it all on one chick's party is soul-destroying. Well, what do you think? Should OP have forgiven her friend or not? Please let us know. No way, she's a total thief. Am I the jerk for telling my uncle that I would never be a stepmom after seeing how his daughter treated my aunt? When I, 20, female, was 7 years old, I lost my parents and was sent to live with my aunt, biological, and her husband, uncle, and his daughter, Kylie. Kylie was 10 when I moved in. She lost her mom when she was 5 or 6, and my aunt had been married to my uncle for a little over a year, so it was a really difficult time for her. But I remember thinking Kylie might get what it was like a little. But she was very clear from day one we were not family. One thing that always stuck out to me was how Kylie really resented and hated my aunt. My aunt couldn't ask Kylie to do anything without being yelled at. She couldn't do anything nice for her without getting glared at. She'd accuse her of disrespecting her mom by trying to play mom. She'd accuse her of doing stuff that she had no right to do. She'd tell my aunt to know her place. My aunt always understood Kylie was grieving, and she pushed my uncle to make sure Kylie got enough time with him but was also able to talk to him. They had her in therapy as well. My aunt told me once when I got upset on her behalf that some people, kids or adults, can find it hard to see their living parent move on and have a new relationship after they lose the other parent, and Kylie was struggling. A few months ago, I saw Kylie for the first time in 12 years, and she could not hide her still existing hatred for my aunt. The way she looked at her, I even heard her tell my uncle that my aunt was nothing to her, and all she did was attempt to steal a deceased woman's entire family. It made me realize just how strong that resentment can be. I also know from my uncle's sister that Kylie is still furious my aunt ever tried to ask her to do anything or issued any kind of consequence for her behavior when she was a kid. The experience of living with them always made me say I didn't see myself ever wanting to date and marry someone who has kids. But having seen her hatred for my aunt at 30, knowing she still resents my aunt for even daring to ask her to do something in the home, it made me realize that while it can work and some people have amazing blended families, it's definitely not for me. A few days ago, I came home for Christmas, staying until the 28th. My uncle was talking about my boyfriend and then asked me about this guy at work who asked me out a couple of times and why I never gave him a chance since I thought he was cute, etc. I told him it just wouldn't work. But he kept pushing, and I told him it was because he had kids. He told me that was a strange reason when I want kids, and I said, yeah, but after seeing how Kylie treated my aunt, I've decided I would never be a stepmom. My uncle was upset about it and told me I can't swear off men with kids for that reason, and he said divorced and widowed parents deserve to find happiness again. I said they do, and I would never say they shouldn't have that, but I do not want to be that for them. He said it was rude for me to blame Kylie. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He's right. Widows and widowers do deserve happiness and to find someone if they choose. However, it is your life. I wouldn't want to date anyone with kids either. Now, that might change when I'm older. I'm only 24 now. Your opinion is valid regardless of your experience. Having kids and dating is hard. Babysitters, school, parenting, etc. There are a lot more variables than there are now to introduce, and it's complicated. Also, if I was in that position, I wouldn't want to start seriously seeing someone unless my kid really liked them. How the heck do you navigate that? You don't want to introduce them too early and have one party get attached and it doesn't work out. You don't want to introduce them too late and make your kid or partner feel like you're hiding them. And what happens if they don't get along? Stay in the relationship and risk your kid feeling like you aren't on their team anymore? He took what you said personally, when in actuality, it had nothing to do with him. Am I the jerk for not buying my son a car like I did for the rest of his siblings? I, 49 male, have 4 kids, twin boys who are both 27, one girl who's 25, and another son who's 21. This post is about my youngest son, Jack. Since they were kids, I promised my kids 2 things. 1, I'll fully pay for all of their college expenses, housing, tuition, food, etc. And 2, once they graduate college, I'll buy them a car. I kept that promise for all of my kids, except with Jack, and now I want to know if I'm being a jerk for this. I paid for Jack's college expenses, but I'm refusing to buy him a car. Below are some of the reasons why. 1. I co-signed my name on the lease for Jack's room that he rents with a friend, and I send Jack his portion of the rent every month. The friend started taking advantage of my name being on the lease and stopped paying for rent too, knowing I'll cover the amount because I don't want missed payments on my credit score. I asked Jack multiple times to ask his roommate to pay his portion, but the boy did not care to even respond to me, and I ended up paying for 6 months of his friend's rent too until I finally solved the problem by getting my name off the lease. 2. Jack has a very rude and entitled attitude. He speaks to us like we are his low-performing employees. The only time he contacts us is when he wants money and goes no contact otherwise, and we don't know what we ever did to him to make him treat us this way. 3. Last year when my wife had to be hospitalized, all of my kids flew back home to be there for their mother. Jack didn't want to, but one of his siblings bought him a plane ticket and talked him into flying out. Instead of being glad to be beside his very sick mother at the hospital, he spent the entire visit making everyone run errands for him. His sister has to cook a specific type of meal for him. We had to drive him to the gym at a very specific time he demanded, and acted like it was one huge inconvenience for him to have to fly out. I even talked to my other kids about whether we were bad parents and that caused Jack to act this way, but all my other kids don't know why he ended up so entitled and spoiled. The rest of my kids are extremely different from Jack. We all get along with each other and care about one another. For the rest of my kids, I spent maybe $100,000 on each kid's total college expenses. With Jack's careless spending habits and unwillingness to save us any money, Jack's college years cost me a total of $180,000. So I refused to buy the promised car. Jack's upset and has gone to his grandparents complaining about me. My mother-in-law already hates me, and now she's calling me a jerk, saying that I'm playing favorites because I bought everyone a car and not Jack. Not the jerk. If I were being petty, I'd buy a junk or used car for him. If he wants to be so technical about holding you to a promise, well, that's his car. Tell him the rest of the budget was eaten up by the $80,000. Tell him to learn the consequences of his actions. Not the jerk. For people saying that you raised Jack to be that way, they're completely ignoring the fact that we're human beings and not robots. At some point, personalities start to factor in. My family situation is similar to yours, and I think during the teenage years, adjustments had to be made to accommodate the different personalities in order to set us up for success. My brother and I did not respond to the same treatment, and we received different privileges accordingly. My family would have given me the receipts and bills for my expenses if I acted that entitled. Perhaps that may be what Jack needs instead of a car to help him get a clue. Everyone sucks here. You raised a spoiled brat, and while you're not obligated to buy him a car, you should have forewarned him that dealing with the rent issues meant no car. Am I the jerk for not forcing my stepdaughter to go over to her mother's house? My husband, Tim, 34 male, and I, 33 female, have been married for 3 years. Tim has a daughter, Lucy, who's 13. Both Tim and Lucy's mother, Deborah, were teenagers when Lucy was born. Deborah wanted nothing to do with Lucy and disappeared, so Tim had full custody, and he's been raising Lucy as a single dad when we met. I've been in Lucy's life since she was 6, and I consider her my own. A couple of years ago, Deborah suddenly appeared back in our lives and contacted Tim wanting to meet with Lucy. Deborah was an addict. I'm not sure if she still is, but I wouldn't be surprised, and generally not a great person for a kid to be around. But Tim would allow Lucy to see Deborah once in a while. Lucy seems like she is just going through the motions with finally having her mother in her life. She doesn't particularly seem excited or upset, she just does as she's told. Deborah also has a boyfriend, Don. Recently, after Lucy came back home from dinner with Deborah and Don, she mentioned to Tim and I that she found Don very weird. He didn't explicitly say anything to Lucy, but she felt uncomfortable being around him. A few days ago, Tim had to unexpectedly go on a work trip to another country where he will be completely unavailable for 3 days. He won't have any type of service to communicate with us. That trip also happens to coincide on the same time as when Tim and Deborah agreed that Lucy can spend a night at Deborah's. So I was the one dropping Lucy off at Deborah's, and when we got there, we saw Dawn sitting on the front porch staring at the car. I looked at Lucy, seeing if she still wanted to even go in, and by the look on her face, I asked her if she wanted to go get ice cream at downtown Disney instead. We live near Disneyland, and downtown Disney is in the shopping area right outside the park. She immediately said yes, so I got out of the car and told Deborah that Lucy doesn't want to go to dinner anymore, and I'm taking her to downtown Disney for ice cream. Deborah started screaming at me, saying I'm a nobody trying to bribe her daughter with ice cream, so she doesn't want to spend dinner with her own mother anymore. I told her Lucy doesn't want to go in and I won't force her to. Deborah responded that Tim had agreed to Lucy spending the night at her place, and the matter is between her and Tim. I shouldn't be involved or make decisions because I'm not Lucy's mother. That made me really mad, so I hopped back in my car and drove Lucy to downtown Disney. We actually ended up going to Disneyland as well for the rest of the day. Deborah has been spamming my phone, calling me all sorts of names for not forcing Lucy to stay at her place, and Tim is still unavailable and can't be reached for a comment. I genuinely don't think I was being a jerk, but I need some second opinions. Not the jerk. You listened to what your stepdaughter wanted to do. Hopefully when you explain the full situation to Tim, he understands. I would ask Lucy to tell him herself why she didn't want to go there. Then Tim can have a conversation with Deborah himself. He will need to be the one to have the chat with her. You did the right thing. My boyfriend demands I wear an ugly sweater to Christmas dinner with his family. My boyfriend and I have been dating for a few months, and he invited me to meet his family for the first time for Christmas dinner. According to him, it's his brother's, he has 3, family tradition to make new partners wear an ugly Christmas sweater of their choosing as a rite of passage, his words, for entering the family. At first, I thought the concept was cute. I had imagined things like Santa getting stuck in a chimney, lights, bells, etc. But when they mailed me the sweater, my jaw dropped. It was probably the most inappropriate Christmas sweater I've ever seen. Without getting too much into detail, let's just say that Santa was participating in an act that was not okay to be seen in public. I personally thought it was gross, and it was bad enough that if someone at work saw me wearing it, I'd definitely get in trouble. I told my boyfriend that in no way would I wear this, but he said I was being a wet blanket and unsupportive of his family tradition. I said I'd wear any other sweater and would even pay for one myself, but he just called me a spoilsport. I do love my boyfriend, so I actually considered wearing it and asking people to not take pictures as a compromise. But the day of the party, I decided not to wear it last minute. I had to drive separately from work, so my boyfriend didn't know about this prior. When his brother opened the door, he eyed me up and down, and I could tell he wasn't happy that I didn't wear the sweater. My boyfriend was really upset when he saw me, and we argued in the guest room for a bit. His brothers teased me for being so uptight, and I could tell the jokes embarrassed my boyfriend. I ended up leaving the party early without my boyfriend, and we've been fighting via text since. Now, I'm thinking that I was the jerk for taking the joke too seriously. Not the jerk. I honestly thought by the title it was one of those cheesy ugly sweaters, but it seems like it wasn't that. It also seems like they want to turn you into the butt of a joke for the evening. Also, I'm guessing none of the males wore ugly sweaters either. Not the jerk. Ugly sweaters are one thing. Crude sweaters meant as hazing are another thing. That your boyfriend supported the sweater should be a little concerning. Honestly, if a family has a habit of hazing new partners, the best thing you can do for yourself is to set proper expectations immediately and not play along. Starting out with them in a compliant, don't rock the boat attitude is just kicking the can down the road. If they're testing your threshold for compliance and mistreatment, then non-compliance is key. If they're just mean people who are more concerned with their own hilarity, eye roll, than they are with making a guest feel welcome, then again, you're telling them right up front to leave you out of it. Not the jerk. And depending on your boyfriend's willingness to protect you now, in the beginning, when you're still in the honeymoon phase and everyone is on their best behavior, really take a long, hard look at this family's dynamics. With the expectation that the first year or two are when everyone's putting their best foot forward, the inference is that it's all downhill from here. Are you really looking down the road and seeing a good outcome here? Update. I really appreciate everyone who took the time to message me. After reading your comments, I really thought long and hard about my boyfriend's family and whether or not I wanted to be with a partner who wouldn't respect my boundaries. We got into one final fight when he nagged me to apologize to his brothers all separately. I told him that if he wore the sweater they bought me to our Friendsmas party, about 15 to 20 attendees, then I'd apologize. He immediately freaked out and said no, and tried to argue that they wouldn't understand because it's not their tradition. I explained that it had nothing to do with tradition, but rather with my personal comfort level and whether or not the sweater was an appropriate article of clothing. I asked him why he felt uncomfortable wearing the sweater in front of friends, and he refused to answer. He froze up, and that's when I realized it wasn't going to work out. He knew that it was inappropriate, and he himself refused to wear it in public. Yet he was too stubborn to apologize and be on my side. I told him it wasn't going to work out, so I guess I'm going into the new year single as a Pringle. A few friends found out about the breakup already, and this might have made me a jerk for now, but I sent them the photo of the sweater and explained what happened. I'm also glad to know that even people in real life were grossed out. I don't know what will happen with his friendships with those people, but it's none of my business at this point. Thanks, guys, and happy holidays. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend and his family? Please let us know.
Good job, OP. Now that's what you call dodging a bullet. A Christmas bullet.
Am I the jerk for upstaging my wife and our Christmas cookie baking tradition? I'm 25, male, and my wife is 23, female. And we have a tradition every Christmas where we would bake Christmas cookies and frost them with our friends. We'd then give the cookies out to friends and family and helpers. Every year, my wife would take on the bulk of the baking duties, insisting that only she knew how to bake them right and only letting whoever is helping frost them. She always insisted on doing all the baking because frosting is the fun part and the only thing people want to do. Usually this frosting and baking marathon would last until the wee hours of the morning and start around noon. Well, this year, for reasons that aren't relevant to this post today, she won't be available on the day we normally do all of this. She was sad that we wouldn't be able to do our cooking tradition. I said that I was more than capable of baking the cookies. She seemed to think I was joking and that I could basically never do it myself. Well, I said I'd try, and she wished me a sarcastic good luck. Well, in the run-up to the days of baking and frosting, I started running drills to optimize production. I started rearranging the house in various configurations, running tests on the dough we were using to see how long it took to bake, and making appropriate changes while running it by taste testers, substituting ingredients for quicker bake time while preserving taste, making the cookies as thin as possible without compromising frosting ratio, canvas space for creativity, and/or comprising structural integrity, etc. Come the day of baking, I have everything down to a science, and friends and family come in, I give them a rundown. After a couple hours, most kinks are worked out and cookies are flowing out at a breakneck pace. Eventually, we start running out of material, something that never happened when my wife was running it. We start making runs to the store for the necessary raw materials to fuel our mighty cookie forges. By the time we were exhausted around 2 a.m., we had produced at least 5 times the amount of cookies we ever had before. Well, my wife gets home a couple days later and is weirdly upset. She insists the cookies taste weird, that we spent too much money, and that I was actively trying to make her look bad by making so much more than her. In truth, I ran blind tests to see if anyone could differentiate between our old recipe and mine, and no one could. I also only spent 40% more than previous years as I slotted in some cheaper ingredients and bought some stuff in bulk, and I had absolutely zero intention of upstaging her. I simply had the goal of maximizing cookie production. She says that even if I didn't do it on purpose, that I should have thought about how it made her look to our circles and that I have embarrassed her, and she actually called me a jerk. She's never called me a jerk in all 3 years of our marriage, so I can't help but think I am. Am I the jerk? I don't know if you're the jerk, but it sounds like you took something she enjoys and was sad about missing and did it without her. I would be sad if someone did that to me personally. Edited to add my vote, not the jerk. To me, it sounds like she didn't think he could do it, or even better than her. Also, it's a tradition. Why do they have to stop because one person is missing for that year? She liked baking and basically gatekeeping it from others. He didn't do anything wrong with taking it over and trying at it for one time that his wife couldn't do it. Not the jerk. If it's a tradition you do together, then yeah, you don't do it on your own. My husband and I apple pick and strawberry pick together every year. I couldn't see myself going alone. It's a tradition that we do it together. I'd be hurt if he went without me. Not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong per se, and your methods sound fun and add a competitive edge which enhances the excitement for some people. But no one likes to discover that a tradition on which they've spent time and effort and enjoyed doing doesn't need them at all to function, and may even be better without their hard work. Maybe consider telling your wife how much you and your friends missed her at this year's event, and that you'd rather have her and less cookies than so many more cookies without her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
So sensitive, so sensitive. I can't believe she's making a big deal of this.
Blind me in traffic with your high beams? Okay, two can play this game. I was driving home from work and traffic was backed up pretty badly for a few miles. It was stop and go. When I get stuck in that, I'll usually back about 75 feet off the car in front of me so that I can hold a pace and move at a slow but constant roll, like the semi-trucks do. This way, I'm not participating in the bumper-to-bumper move and brake like the rest of the smooth-brain drivers. Some dude in an Acura crossover was behind me, and I guess he was getting upset because I wasn't 2 feet from the car in front of me, driving like a smooth brain. So he gets up on me and starts beeping his horn at me. I think to myself that it's funny as I turn up my radio. But then he starts flashing his brights at me, which is where I get annoyed. He's in one of those Acuras that has a super bright LED headlight. My car is much lower than his, so his low beams are already pretty bright in my mirrors. Bright enough that I don't want to look in them. The first time he flashed his high beams, it put spots in my vision for a moment. It genuinely hurt my eyes. After the first flash, he waited for about 10 seconds, beeps his horn, and then flashes again. Now I'm getting upset. I'm thinking, where do you want me to go? Do you really think being 2 feet from the car in front of you will make traffic move faster? Then he does it a third time, but this time he held them on for about 15 seconds. Time for the gloves to come off. During those 15 seconds, as I'm looking away from my mirrors, I see my 14,000 lumen searchlight sitting in my passenger seat, at which point I'm immediately overcome by a wave of chaotic, lawful excitement that he is just set in motion and cannot be stopped. I think to myself, oh buddy, you just opened the wrong can of worms. You're gonna learn today. I grab the flashlight and set it to its absolute max, 14,000 lumen brightness setting. The flashlight has a sensor in it to automatically dim the light if facing down on a table, because otherwise the diodes would get so hot they would melt the lens. The 14,000 lumen setting is so intense, the 57 watt-hour battery can only hold it for 180 seconds before the flashlight automatically notches down to a measly 9,500 lumens. During those 180 seconds, the light will burn through 15% of its battery power. For reference on just how bright this is, the literal sun emits a luminosity of 11,000 lumens per square foot on a bright and clear day. I turn it around and aim it straight at the back of my rear window. My car is pretty noisy, so before I turn it on, I rev up my engine to make sure that he's facing directly towards me when I flash the full force of an afternoon sun at him. I hit the power button and can only imagine the freight train of shock and pain that plowed over him. It was so bright, his automatic headlights shut off because the car thought it was daytime. With the lights on, I could see him clear as glass through his tinted windshield. He was covering his eyes and looking down, probably screaming. I watched him try to flip down his sun visor, but his hand couldn't find it, as I thought to myself, "Burn, you jerk." I imagine my facial expression was similar to that of a 5 or 6-year-old roasting insects with a magnifying glass on a bright summer day. After about 5 seconds of blinding light, I took mercy and shut it off. He proceeded to back way the heck off and move over to a different lane. Was this an unsafe thing for me to do? Absolutely. Was this illegal? Almost certainly. Was it warranted? Without question. Possibly the highlight of my year. Drive safe and don't be a jerk to the car in front of you, because they might just have the tools to teach you a lesson. Am I the jerk for sulking during my birthday trip that my boyfriend's parents hijacked? There's a lot to unpack here, but I've done my best to keep it to the essentials. In preparation for my 20-something female birthday that recently passed, my boyfriend, who's also in his 20s, male, booked an overseas trip. It was a surprise, so I left everything to him. A month before the trip, he informed me that his parents, who are in their 50s, would be tagging along. This was unexpected to me. I was uncomfortable, but the booking had already been made. I probably asked if we were sleeping in separate rooms, And he replied no due to financial constraints. Fair. But I later forgot that I asked. He did assure me that his parents would have separate activities and we would have alone time. The trip came around, a 3-day, 2-night trip. Day 1, while in transit, I asked why the arrangement. He disclosed to me that his mother had made a big fuss when she found out about this trip. He had been traveling with me a lot, and she was upset that he hadn't been making time for his parents. On the basis that her birthday falls on the same week as mine. Surprise, she insisted on joining the trip. So how could her only son say no? I did not take this new information well emotionally, especially because I don't like his mother to begin with. Also the fact that this was straight up an emotionally manipulative move. We check into accommodations and I realize we're sharing one room. We have no privacy. We have virtually no alone time together on the first day. I sleep conflicted. Day 2 was where it got really bad. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and with a flu. I was mentally spiraling, thinking how dare his mother impinge on a trip for me like this. I was close to crying and I couldn't even tell my boyfriend or cry. Naturally, I had zero interest in entertaining his parents. Later, I was told that I was frowning the entire day, unreceptive, disengaged, and when his mother spoke to me, I replied to her brusquely and avoided eye contact. I avoided conversations and slept whenever I could in the car. Day 3 and until now. The trip ended and I felt more liberated than anything else. A few days later, my boyfriend informs me that his mother was very offended by my actions on day 2 and she thinks I'm a brat who can't respect her elders. She doesn't want to see me for the time being. Oh no, I think. How tragic. God, how little I care. To be fair, his parents had done nothing to offend me during the trip. They did not impose on me any expectations or rules, and I would even say that his mother was accommodating and kind to me throughout. That's the one thing that makes me feel mildly bad. But in my opinion, they should never have made what was my birthday trip into a family trip. I regret acting so childishly, and perhaps I should have dealt with it better, but I am not apologetic for my feelings. Maybe she didn't deserve it, but she shouldn't have come, and maybe my behavior during the trip was because I wanted to punish everyone, scorched earth style. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Dear Lord, this whole thing is the biggest red flag of all time. Run now or start mentally preparing for them to tag along on your honeymoon. Not the jerk. Seriously, your birthday trip with your boyfriend turned into a family vacation, sharing a single room with his parents, and you were not feeling well, and you're supposed to entertain them? Oh no. It was your trip, and you were there for you, not them. You need to ask yourself if you want this type of crap happening all the time because your boyfriend needs to grow a spine and boundaries with his mother, or you need a new boyfriend, because if one of the two don't happen, you're going to be putting up with this for the rest of your life. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.